This is the House of Hockey podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. Hockey is more than a game, it's a lifestyle. It's you, the diehard supportive fans, your favorite players who are on the team you cheer for, and the organization who supports them.
The companies that make your gear, bags, and beer league sweaters. The hockey moms and hockey dads, and everything else that makes this House of Hockey your home. Come on in. I'm Breezy.
And I'm Rae.
And this is our house. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the House of Hockey podcast, episode 147. What's going on?
Who are you?
Oh, I'm Breezy.
And I'm Rae. And we have a guest this episode.
We do. We have a guest. We are talking all things playoff for the most part, but also kind of focusing on the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, we really wanted to sort of get an expert to give us some better insight on this team because they performed so unexpectedly well at the beginning of this season, as we all know. And we've talked about here, Breezy and I, about how they just sort of had this incredible season. And we wanted to know what is going on from an expert's opinion. And that is why we asked Kristy Flannery to join us. She is a contributor to the Hockey Writers, and she has been writing with them since March of 2021. And she is covering the New Jersey Devils for them. She's a credentialed correspondent, so she's in the locker room. She is, there at the games covering the team. She is a member of the Professional Hockey Writers Association, and you can follow her on Twitter and Instagram. Just look for in Stilettos _NHL or skating in Stilettos. She'll come up, but she also has a podcast as well that you can listen to. And we thought she was the perfect person to talk about the Devils.
Yeah. And we were right. It was great. We had a good time, and you'll be hearing it shortly.
Yeah, we were right.
We were right.
No,
that happens a lot, though. We're right about a lot of things, whether you agree or not.
Exactly. No, Kristy is also from New Jersey. She's like the perfect person for this job and to cover this team. And there's no nonsense with her, and she's kind and she gets right to the point. She has her opinion and she backs it up. And we covered it all. Jack Hughes, Lindy, why they will or won't win the Stanley Cup this season. And
Luke
I think
Hughes.
Timo Meier. She gives us a lot of insight into this team, both now this season and into the future, regardless of what happens for them in the playoffs. It's definitely worth a listen to hear just how exciting this team has become. So,
yeah. And we went over a few players' previous playoff depth that they've brought, a few stats, I would say, not super analytical or anything like that, but very interesting. It definitely made me kind of question my previous thoughts, and it was super insightful, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes. All right. Enjoy the interview with Kristy Flannery. Welcome to the House of Hockey podcast. Kristy Flannery, she is like a joy to finally have talking hockey on this podcast. Her and I connected through social several years ago, I feels like, and we chatted during playoffs, and then life happened, and now we have her back and on the show, and she is one of the contributors to the Hockey Writers, and she does this full time, and we are so happy to have her talk all things New Jersey Devils. We're going to have you come back and talk like other teams, but we really wanted to hyper focus this conversation on the Devils because that is your team. That's where you live and you get to cover them.
I do.
Which is like a dream, right?
It's a dream. It's absolutely a dream. It's the best. And it's a different mentality when you wake up and you actually love what you're doing. It's just the best.
Yeah. Okay, let's start with, I'm going to go with the big question.
Okay.
Why won't the Devils win the Stanley Cup?
Why won't they? Probably inexperience. They have a lot of veterans. They have Brendan Smith, they have Eric Holla, Andre Palat, Thomas Tatar. But I think as a group, when you look at them, they really are inexperienced compared to teams like Tampa and Colorado. It's just a different thing. And I was talking on my own podcast, and I was saying how when you look back on Tampa and Colorado specifically, they had that learning curve that they had to kind of get into the postseason and have those hard losses to bounce back from. You had Tampa, who was embarrassed when Columbus swept them in the first round. You had Colorado that, after their historically horrible season, they got into the postseason. They suffered a really bad loss. And there's that learning curve that I think comes with becoming a Stanley Cup contending team. And the Devils are more advanced than anyone thought they'd be this year. And listen, once you're in, you're in. But I look at this team and I think there's still some lessons to learn for the young guys like Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. And I think this is a good starting point, but I don't think they're there quite yet. But anything can happen.
Anything can happen. Is there a player on the team that has won the cup before? I'm trying to think.
So Andre Palat has obviously won too. And I don't know if you want to count him, but Jonathan Bernier is on the roster. He hasn't played in a while, but he won a Stanley Cup. Actually, in 2012, he was Jonathan Quick's tandem partner when LA beat the New Jersey Devils. So technically they're...
Technically. Well, you have a little bit of playoff experience there, so...
Yeah, there is. And I think, too, a lot of people... Some people have been disappointed in Andre Palat's performance this year. And you have to remember, yes, he signed a very big contract. Some people didn't like what the average annual salary was for that. But he was also injured for a while at the start of the season. And I think there's an adjustment when you come to a new team and learn a new system. So I'm curious to see, because he was really brought in for the playoffs. This is this man's moment to shine. So I'm curious to see how he's going to do once April 17th hits.
Okay, so why will the Devils win the Stanley Cup this year?
They're a resilient group. Over half of their wins have been comeback victories. This is a team.
Over half of them?
Over half of them have been comeback victories.
That's a lot.
This is a team that is resilient, and they will kind of force themselves on teams. Even though they're down, they're never out of it. And I think that alone makes them a very scary team to go up against, because they have that mentality and they've had it all season long. And again, you have the veteran guys there to kind of help Jack, help Nico, help Jesper Bratt, along as they go through this postseason journey. I think out of all the teams, I'm going to say maybe Seattle's in this category too. The Devils, you don't really know what you're going to get in the postseason with them. There's conversations from the outside that, they can't handle a physical game. They're not going to do well in a physical series. But I think there's a lot of people that don't know what to expect. And I think that alone can make them a scary team, because there's other teams what you're going to get with Boston. You know what you're going to get with Tampa. You don't really know with New Jersey. Are they going to go far? Are they going to fold after 4? You don't know. And I think that is a very scary concept to their opponents.
What's
scary?
What's your instinct say? Are they going to fold, or are they going to, what's your gut after following them all season?
I don't think they're going to get swept. I think the Rangers, I think they could do well, because I think they're actually pretty evenly matched, to be honest with you. I think that but you have to remember too, the Rangers are not the Devils. I think from the outside, a lot of people think they're on the same trajectory, and they're not. The Rangers have a lot of veterans on their team. They're in a win now mode. And at the end of the day, they're not going to want to waste Shesterkin's prime like they did with Lundqvist. They are in it to win it. Whereas the Devils, like I said, surprised a lot of people, made it this far. Their window's only beginning. The Rangers is more, I guess, halfway towards closing at this point, with, the fact that a lot of their main players are over 30 years old. I think that the Devils will do well against them, because for some reason, Shesterkin gives the Devils give Shesterkin a hard time. I had to make sure I said that correctly.
Yes.
Whereas
and also put that tri-state area jab in. So yeah.
Well,
okay.
I mean, it's statistics. It's not even
okay.
It's stats. Shesterkin does not play his best with New Jersey, and we've seen it. Some teams just have players' numbers and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think the Islanders, if the Devils can jump over Carolina and get that number 1 spot in the Metro, I think the Islanders would be a hard time for the Devils. I think Florida could be a hard time for the Devils. So I think it really depends on the matchup.
I could see that. I mean, also too, like my perspective, like I don't watch a whole lot of Devils games, but I almost consider that entire team as being like the frat boys, where like they're just having a good time on at every game, and then when you see them like versus like the Rangers, like you said, it's more of like serious, have to win right this second, like screw these guys, like we're major focus, we're career focused, we want to win, we have to graduate right now. And then the Devils are just like, yeah, let's just go get ourselves like a couple Borgs and have a good time.
I could tell you that when the Devils went on their 13-game winning streak earlier in the season, every time I went into the locker room with the rest of the media, I was expecting there to be like music and like all this great stuff, because they were breaking franchise and league records at that point. And it was all business. You walked in there and it was all business. Like Nico handles himself like a professional, no matter if they win 8-1 or lose 7-1. Like Nico is like this all the time. You have Brendan Smith. Like there's a lot of guys there that their whole, I guess, mantra this year is don't get too high, don't get too low. And you saw that anytime you went in the locker room after a game, no matter what the score was, they always had that mentality of now we have another one to do. So there is that professionalism and there is that business mindset when you go in and actually interact with them after a game. They truly stuck to do not get too high, do not get too low.
So is that, along with their resiliency, what is like the secret sauce of why they have been so extraordinary this season? Is there something else? Are we missing something? What is it?
I think it's such a hard question to answer, because I know a lot of people last year thought that like Lindy Ruff was the problem and everything like that. And it's like, no, they had a ton of injuries, and that's not an excuse. That's a reality. When you have as many injuries as they did, look at Columbus this year. You can't really put a team together out on the ice. I think for them, what's working is Tom Fitzgerald in the offseason brought in the right pieces. I don't think anyone thought that Eric Holla, Brendan Smith, John Marino, and Vitek Vanacek would be the pieces that the puzzle that we're missing, but that's exactly what happened. And sometimes you don't need the flashiest players. You just, it's like Herb Brooks said, I don't need the best players, I need the right players. And he really got a roster together that's very complementary for each other. And on top of that, you have a lot of guys that are having amazing years. Dougie Hamilton, he's behind Erik Karlsson with, over 20 goals. You have Jack Hughes, who's doing just ridiculous Jack Hughes things that we're just expecting at this point. He's just having a great year. Timo Meier just hit 40 goals. It's just, everything's just going right for the Clubs this year, whereas last year, everything went wrong.
This week's episode of the House of Hockey podcast is brought to you by... It's NBA playoffs time. That means big hoops action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Get in on the excitement of every game with the touch of a button. New customers can make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if their team wins. Plus, everyone can score a no-sweat same-game parlay every day during the NBA playoffs. Open the DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in, and place a same-game parlay on any NBA game. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. Download the app now and sign up with code THPN. That's THPN for the Hockey Podcast Network. New customers can make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if their team wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, that's 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gaming resources.
And then you have Luke Hughes that's coming in. How do you think that's going to, are you going to have like another Sedin brothers kind of on the ice where they just have like these no-look passes? Like,
I try to keep myself very realistic when it comes to the young guys coming in, especially young defensemen, because everyone knows young defensemen take a long time to fully develop. Not every defenseman is going to run in and be Cale Makar, and by 23 years old could literally just retire because he's won everything under the sun at this point.
Yes.
Luke, for me, it's going to be interesting because I think when it comes time for training camp next year, you have to think Damon Severson and Brian Graves are both UFAs at the end of this season. Could Luke take one of their spots? You don't know. The only question I have is right now, this team looks like they're at the beginning stages of being a true contender season after season to be competitive. Young defensemen make young mistakes. It has nothing to do with their talent or their skill set. It's just the learning curve of being in the NHL. And people
inexperience.
It's just inexperience. It's something that comes with the experience of doing it. And, a lot of fans are like, oh, next year we're going to have Simone Nemec, we're going to have Luke Hughes. And I'm like, you have to keep in mind, young defensemen make young mistakes. You don't want to sacrifice the team's overall prime years to develop young kids that it's not going to stunt them if they go in the AHL for a year.
Right.
It's going to just help them further develop, because from college to NHL, I would imagine that's a big jump. I'm not a player. I don't know, but I would say that's a massive jump because you're going from playing with kids to playing with men. And those are two different things. And I will say that after the Devils Tampa game, I was in the tunnel and I saw a bunch of the Tampa Bay players walking out. They're men. They're massive. They're built like these are not boys. These are men. And that's completely different than playing in college.
Yeah, that would be terrifying on the ice. Like,
you hear it all the time, right? Like, oh, like he's young. He needs to put on weight. He needs to put on muscle. And like, those are all things that just come with the territory. So with Luke, obviously we're expecting a lot of skill. We're expecting a top defender, but for me, there's no point in rushing him. Just like there was no point to rush Simone Nemec. Like when they get here, they'll get here. There's no point in putting them in a situation where they're going to fail.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing with Shane Wright. I think so many people were like, he's ready. He's going to be the next big, and even he thought he was going to be the next big star and ready to play, right? And we're seeing the team handle him correctly by keeping him I think they just put him back into the AHL. They're working him, they're doing things, and I'm sure he's frustrated, but it's going to be for his best interest in the long run, and it's going to make him even more hungry once he gets on the ice, full time in the NHL. But yeah, we've seen it there.
People forget that these are kids. Like if they weren't playing hockey, they'd be in a dorm room flipping a cup, playing beer pong. So like, let them develop. There already is a pressure on them because of where they were drafted. There already is that expectation that's going to follow them. Let them just play the game, get comfortable. It's going to be an adjustment. It's great that Jack is already there and Jack can help him with certain things, but just let him develop. He doesn't need to be Dougie Hamilton's defensive partner next year. It's okay if he's not. Let him just get there on his own.
Yes.
Do you think that there's pressure though, like in upper management to get him onto the team so then they can like have like a marketing push for like the Hughes brothers?
Obviously that's going to be huge. I think the Devils, I think actually teased something on Twitter about like, imagine like a game on a Tuesday where like Luke Hughes passes the puck to Jack Hughes and like at Prudential Center, and the Devils next home game is on a Tuesday. So everyone's like, oh my God, Luke's making his debut on Tuesday. Could it happen? Absolutely it could. Because at this point, even though Lindy Ruff has said he doesn't really want to rest any of his players, he wants everyone to kind of keep going. He still has the option to rest people because there's a lot of depth on the team, and now you have Luke. So, and again, you're not really playing high pressure games at this point. Like, yes, they want to keep winning and they would love to get that first, spot in the Metro, but they're not the Islanders, they're not Pittsburgh, they're not Florida right now. I personally love the storyline that Jack is actually 1 point shy of tying Patrick Elias for most points in franchise history. All my thought process is that if Jack is held off the score sheet tonight against Boston, he comes home on Tuesday, ties the record, beats the record, becomes the record holder, and has Luke on the ice with him. Like that for me, from a writer's standpoint, is like the storyline that everyone would go nuts for. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Everybody would love to see that. That would be huge. Could we go back to Coach Lindy for a second? Because one of the other big stories that we were seeing at the beginning of this season was your fellow fans, because you are still a fan too, but you are professional. But there was chanting from the fans, fire Lindy, and then sorry Lindy, in the first, 20 games of the season for them. what is the deal with the fan? What is the deal with that? What
I feel
is wrong with the fans? What's going on there? Explain that mindset to us.
That's like a New Jersey thing to do, right? Like, I'm like, this would never happen in like Minnesota or like the deep South. Like, this is just a straight up like tri-state area Jersey thing. They jumped the gun. And again, I think it was because people blamed Lindy for last season. Whereas my philosophy is, you know what? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't necessarily make it drink. I don't know why people outside of the room felt that it was his system that was the problem, because it's basically the same thing this year. So you know that that wasn't the problem. But I think when Tom Fitzgerald hired Andrew Brunette as the associate coach, a lot of people were hoping that he would literally just bump Lindy and Lindy would be out and Andrew Brunette would take over. I think that was everyone's hope in the summer. And when Tom Fitzgerald came out and said, Lindy's my guy, I'm sticking with him, fans were not happy because that's not what they wanted. And when the team lost their first 2 games, one of them being against the Philadelphia Flyers, by the time they got back to Prudential Center, fans were just done. They were over it. They were done. And if there's one thing that they do in New Jersey is they will vocalize how they feel about something. So, but you know what? Lindy handled it so well. When he was asked about it post game, he basically said, like, it's my responsibility to get this team to win. And he's always been like that, which is why even last year I said, I really like him. I think he's very honest. I don't really ever see him like putting the blame on people unnecessarily to kind of like save himself. I think he's very much like, that's on me. And the sorry Lindy chants were just hilarious. I remember sitting, I was in the press box and I looked over at somebody. I'm like, are they saying what I think they're saying? I was like, is that what's happening right now? And like afterwards, Lindy's like, like one day, like we'll go get a beer with the fans and it'll be just like a ha moment. But this is a guy that has a good chance of winning the Jack Adams Award this year. Yep. Like that's who you were booing. I would say without a doubt, he's going to be a finalist. It's really going to come down to him and Montgomery. And if you look at last year to this year, depending on how your perspective of the award, he should win it because Montgomery inherited a veteran winning team.
That's true.
Yeah.
Lindy had a bunch of youngsters and then had a couple off-season acquisitions that he had to get into the system and make it work. So depending on how you look at the award, it would be Lindy. Look at their goal differential from last year to this year. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, holy crap. Like you're making me realize a lot of things right now.
I'm so happy for that. Well, because we talked about it. We talked about it in the media room the other day. And I was like, just because of Boston's historic like season, I would think that it's going to be Jim Montgomery. And a couple guys were like, yeah, but look what Lindy did with this team. It's one thing to inherit greatness. It's something different to turn something around the way that he did. Because he goes, they were a top 5 team, top 3 team in the league, basically all season long. It's not like this was the Blues when they won the cup where in January they were at the bottom and then they turned things around and really like snapped into it. The Devils have been consistently good all year.
I don't know that Montgomery totally inherited like a fully winning team. I think they definitely had a little bit of, they brought in some different players. Yeah, he might have, like you could look at it that way, but I don't know. I've seen Boston play this year enough and a lot, and there's just something different about the guys. I don't think we can credit Montgomery for it, but I think there's just something different that switched. And I think Foligno is a really, really big part of that. I don't know. So I don't know. I'm not, I don't think Boston was as winning as they were last year. I mean, yes, they have a lot of much more veteran players, the 2 goalie, they've got all the pieces, but I don't think they were playing to their optimum last season.
No, but I think what it is, and when I meant that was you have a team that has like Jesper Boquist, which if you're not watching the Devils, you have no idea who that is. You have, again, goaltending that you really had no idea at the beginning of the season what you were going to get out of the goaltending. And then you have Boston, and it's like you have David Krejci, you have Brad Marchand, you have Patrice Bergeron, you have Charlie McAvoy, you have Taylor Hall, who was a former Hart, MVP. So there's just, in the scheme of like listing players, you would give the edge to the Boston Bruins that they're a more veteran, they're a more established, more proven team when you have the Devils that really their main guys have not won anything.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Yes.
That's what I actually meant. I probably didn't explain it right.
No.
It's like inheriting a team of like Stanley Cup champions, then it's like Nate
bunch of
Baxter,
misfits.
Jesper Boquist, Miles Wood. Like, let's put a team together.
Yeah, the Bruins definitely have
Miles
more
Wood.
like marquee names. Miles Wood is a big, yeah.
Sorry.
I
I mean, you look
I
at
got
it and like
distracted.
you can recognize almost every single name on the Bruins roster, but
Right.
like everyone else, like you're always just, or even like Tampa, only because they've had so much success in the last few years. But I feel like this is probably a very unpopular opinion, but like they're gonna crash and burn in my opinion. And it's gonna be like everyone's gonna like lose their mind over and be like, they should have won, regardless of the President's Trophy or whatever. Like we all know that that is somewhat of a curse. But like
you
it's
think
the
the Bruins
teams-
are going to crash and burn?
the Bruins are
Lightning.
definitely gonna crash and
Oh,
burn.
okay. Got it.
Yeah. And then you look at a team like the Lightning, where it's like, again, my personal perspective, it's like these young guys who are just having a good time. And you don't know a lot of, I mean, like, you know, like a Jack Hughes and, you know, like like a Miles Wood, only because of his face, really. Like
He looks like a Franco brother, so we get it.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So like, but then you look at like my personal opinion, like I think the Devils are going to do better than the Bruins, and it's a very unpopular opinion, but it's only because when you have teams that are stacked with so many like all-star names, I feel like they have a lot to prove, and then they always end up coming up short. And I don't know why I'm holding my hands like this. This is just very awkward.
Just ignore Antony crawling in the background.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I think too, when you look at Boston and New Jersey specifically, all the pressure is on Boston. No matter what happens with New Jersey, their season is a success. They can get swept in the first round. Doesn't matter. Their season was a success. Whereas if Boston gets eliminated in the first round, it's failure. So I think there's a difference between having all the pressure on you and then just playing with house money and saying, you know what, we're just going to go out there. We're going to try and win a Stanley Cup. And if we don't, we're going to come back next year and we're going to be stronger and we're going to be better and we're going to have more experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. All right, talk to us about Timo Meier and what is he
say? Give me Timo.
What's he bringing to this locker room and to this team on the ice?
Off the ice, he's very similar to Nico. The first time I spoke with Timo, I sat down, I said, you're Nico, like in 3 years. I don't know if it's a Swiss thing, but very professional,
it has to be.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm like, it has to be just a thing. On the ice, oh my God, he's another one. There was so much pressure on him. And I had people like DMing me after like 2 games. And they're like, oh, this was like, he's a bust. He's a failure. Stop it. It's been 2 games. And I asked him if San Jose's system is similar to New Jersey's. And he was like, no. He said, not even close. So you have, again, you're dealing with the adjustment of learning on a new team. You don't really have time. It's not like you have a training camp to adjust. You have to just go in and do your best. And for him, it's about finding him the right line mates. Because originally everyone thought he was going to be with Jack. Jack needed an elite winger, an elite shooter to play with. And Meier's been on the third line. And you know what? It's been working. And at the end of the day, when you're on the third line and you have a second line that has Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt and a first line that has Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer, you have depth. Your opponent's top defenders can't defend all 3 lines. So it's not bad to have Timo Meier on the third line. It's really not. It's giving you so many more options, and it's making it really hard for the opposing defense to figure out who they need to cover because there's threats on all 3. He's really been making an impact on the power play, which is one of the reasons I think they kind of brought him in too. But yeah, he's slowly adjusting. You could see it kind of more and more. He's definitely coming into himself. And the rule of thumb when I talk to players and coaches is when it's somebody joins a new team, 15 to 20 games. Usually it takes 15 to 20. And funny enough, I think it was 20 games from when they traded for Timo Meier to the last regular season game. So by playoffs, he should be fully acclimated to Devils hockey. And that's going to be really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, because I think a couple episodes, Breezy and I were like, oh, maybe it takes like a week or 2 to get adjusted to the team. It's not 20 games to get adjusted. We were a little off. But
well, I mean, I've talked to like Tomas Tatar and like Ryan Graves, and like they always say, like year 1 in general is like an adjustment and kind of like my word, a struggle, not their word. I'll take that as mine. Whereas it's, year 2, like look at Tatar. Tatar year 1. He was okay. He was okay. I mean, the whole team was just okay as a whole. Tatar's on the first line right now. He's playing exceptionally well. Him, Nico Hischier, and Dawson Mercer were a force for like a handful of games. They were so good. And he's like, you just get more comfortable year 2 because it's on the ice. It's off the ice. It's figuring out where you're living. There's so many factors And I think from an outside perspective, people don't understand that. And it's like, oh, they played 4 games and they're not scoring goals. So like we traded Fabian Zetterlund for nothing. Stop it.
Don't jump to conclusions like that. Yeah.
Stop it.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
But Tatar, real quick, I'm just like going back in my memory here. I don't think he made the playoffs when he was on the Red Wings, but he had a long playoff run for the first year when he was on Vegas, right?
Mhm.
They played for the Stanley Cup championship.
Mhm.
And he also, before he got traded to the Devils, he did a Stanley Cup run with the Canadiens. So do you think that he can bring extra depth with just those 2 years of experience,
Yeah.
making it that far?
Yeah, so he plays. I had to look it up because I didn't want to misquote anything. He has
Uh-huh.
40 games of playoff experience under his
A
belt.
lot.
That's a lot.
The most he played in postseason was with Montreal in 2019-2020. He had
Mhm.
10 games that he played.
Because he gets injured a lot, though, huh?
He actually hasn't been injured this year, I don't think.
I don't think so, but I think in prior years I think he missed a few games from being injured.
Yeah,
Don't
but
quote me on that.
no, he's
Oh,
been really sturdy this year, and he really worked himself into a position where a lot of fans want him back. A lot of fans want him back next year.
See, and that's where you get players that are what do you think? What do they call them? Gosh, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I don't remember. I'm just trying to think of the word. But it's like the underrated player that like
Like the glue
has,
guys,
yeah,
like
maybe
the glue
that's what it
guys in the
is.
room.
Yeah. Where it's
He
like you need them, but they like kind of get slept on, but like not really, you know?
Well, actually, I can tell you, I know exactly what you're talking about because if you want to
Mhm.
talk about Nate Bastian, and I don't know how familiar either of you are with him,
No.
he's a fourth line grinder. His hold on, I gotta actually pull up the stat because
okay, you pull that up, and here's the Tatar injuries.
oh
2022 of April, he had an illness. 21 of May, he had an undisclosed injury. March 20th, upper body, and February of 2020, excuse me. February of 2020, also undisclosed injury. So he did have some like towards the end of season injuries. So yeah,
There you go.
it's like he
I
gets
remember the word.
what?
Unsung hero.
Ah,
there we go.
Unsung
So
hero. That tough. Yeah, that was not what I was really thinking, but it came to mind after that. Never mind.
no, that's all the same thing though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Nate Bastian, for those who don't know, he's a fourth line grinder. Like he's
Mhm.
he doesn't really he's not a top forward in the division or anything like or in on the team or anything like that. The Devils with him in the lineup are 31, 6, and 3. With him out of the lineup, they're like 19, 14, and something.
Oh,
Like there's a
Jeez.
massive discrepancy between him in the lineup and him out of the lineup. And it's one of those weird stats that we all discovered this year. And again, this isn't Jack Hughes. This isn't Nico Hischier. This is a fourth line grinder that has some time on the penalty kill. Sometimes he'll be utilized as a net front presence because he's like 6'4", like 200 pounds. But those players make an impact.
yep.
You don't need
They
to be the
do.
first overall pick to make an impact on a team. It's the wall play. It's how they play away from the puck. All the things that fans are like, oh, it's so cliche when coaches say it. When you watch the game to that level, it's all the things that make a player good.
Sounds like the team is pretty well rounded, and that you guys have all the pieces you need, right? We've seen it, right? You've got all the pieces, you've got health on your side, you've got resiliency. Is there anything they're missing? Is there anything that would make that push them over the edge? Or is it just the years that they need, that time, the experience, playoff experience?
I think it's the experience. And I also maybe I would like to see maybe another physical player in the forward group. Because besides McLeod, Bastian, and Wood, Hall plays a physical, game, but Hall is not that big of a guy. And then you have Timo Meyer who plays a physical game. But if Timo Meyer is going to be in the bottom 6, that really leaves a lack of physicality in your top 6. So maybe just that. I'm curious to see how they're going to handle a physical matchup. That's kind of where my question mark is at this point with them.
Okay. Have you shopped at Pure Hockey? They are America's largest hockey retailer with dozens of stores and the option to shop online. If you or any of your kids play hockey, Pure Hockey is the place to find just about all of your equipment, skates, sticks, gear, bags, jerseys, and accessories. Plus, Pure Hockey is one of our affiliate partners. Next time you break your hockey stick or your kid grows out of his skates, why not check out purehockey.com? While you are looking for hockey equipment, you can also browse around for merchandise from your favorite NHL team, you know who Breezy's and mine are, and make gift giving even easier for your hockey-loving friends and family. And do us a favor, use our special link for purehockey.com when you browse the site and make a purchase, because we'll receive a small commission, which helps me and Breezy create this podcast. Head to the episode's show notes for the special direct link to shop at purehockey.com.
We have one note here, and it says, "Why should we root for the Devils? Why should fans root for
Why
the
should we
Devils?
shoot the Devils?
Why should we shoot the Devil? I don't know.
Let's not
I read shoot the puck. I don't know.
Honestly, they're a fun team. It's a really fast team. They're very speedy. They're dynamic right now. You know, you have Jack Hughes, who I think a lot of people forget when he was first drafted. He was advertised as a player that can shoot the puck, make his teammates around him better, really be a passer. Nobody really was talking about Jack as a shooter when he first came into the league, and now he has 42 goals, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden, like, Jack Hughes can shoot the puck too. I think they're just fun right now. It's kind of like Buffalo. I think Buffalo is a really fun team to watch. It's like the up and coming, and you can sit down and when Tampa actually wins their Stanley Cups and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to jump on the Tampa bandwagon. But for someone who's a writer and likes the storyline, this is a fun time to start paying attention to them. So watch the development and see where this team can go, because sky's the limit. Once you get into the postseason, it's a whole different ballgame. Anyone can win.
Oh yeah. Okay, one
Very
more
true.
question. I'm sorry.
No.
Any interesting stories, funny locker room things you can share? Anything that you think is appropriate that wouldn't break confidence with your relationship?
Dawson Mercer, I can confirm Dawson Mercer is as nice and sweet as he seems to be. For some reason, anytime I tweet about Dawson Mercer, it's like my best tweets of the season. Everyone loves knowing about this kid. I can confirm he is just as nice as everyone says. Whenever I talk to him, I'm like, okay, like, thanks for your time. And as I'm walking away, he'll be like, thank you, like, have a great day. And I always get taken aback because he always makes sure to say that no matter who he talks to. That's how he ends the conversation with you. He's so nice. Tomas Tatar is currently my favorite because after a practice, I knew I needed him for an article. And I walked into the locker room, and thankfully he was sitting at his stall. And I went over to him and I said, do you have a few minutes? And he immediately stood up, like most of them do. And I said to him, like, you just practiced. I was like, take a seat. And he goes, okay. And he actually slid next to me and he goes, do you want to sit with me? And we sat in his stall together for our 4-minute conversation. And I was like, that's a good guy right there. That's a good one.
What a guy.
But I gotta be honest, most of the guys are great. Like, most of them are really, really great. I haven't had any player that had an attitude or made me feel like an idiot or made me feel like I was wasting their time. Like, they're just really nice guys, which is it's refreshing because not every reporter that works in the world of sports can say that about the people that they interact with. But I really have been lucky. They've all been great. Yeah. And they all have different personalities. And it's fun to kind of navigate and see who, if you need a certain thing, who's the best player to go to. So it's always fun to kind of learn the different personalities and kind of figure out who's going to get me what I need. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said about hockey players, right? We are always they're just the best and they'll do whatever, they'll say whatever, we need to. It's a we sport. but to hear it firsthand is always nice. And especially being a woman in this world, it's also super nice to hear that they are just as welcoming. It's also the way you are as a reporter too, that will set the tone for anything. There's some people out there who, I mean, yeah, you're like, what are you doing? Why are you asking that? And I mean, I get it.
I think there's a hard line, I think, from an outside perspective. And you want one, not every reporter is going to be your kind of latte. Like my whole thing is like, I'm a features writer. I want to humanize the players and like kind of bring people in to really understand them on a human level, that they're people at the end of the day. There's reporters that want the good story. They want the clicks. They want, all the recognition. And it depends on how you go about it. But I think for me, I'm like, I just want to treat you like a human being. I want to treat you with respect. There are certain things that obviously, if you tell me, I'm going to keep off the record, especially if it comes to your family or anything of that nature, because it's not the fans' business to know. And I appreciate that you trust me with that information. And it's really just treating them like human beings and understanding that there's a whole aspect to it. Yep. That's just how I approach it. I mean, I'm still pretty new, but that's just, that's how I do it.
I think you got to just stick with who you are, and your stories are great and incredible. And I can't wait to see what more you cover and write during the playoffs. So thank you. So
much fun. Thanks guys for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming over to our House of Hockey podcast and hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. And in the meantime, you can follow us on social media. Just look